Hello, world and universe. Welcome to the Trevor Donald Experience. Manifest your truth. And if you're new to the channel, please hit that like and subscribe button. And for all my continued followers, I want to say thank you. And this is an opinion-based video channel where I try to open your eyes and ears up to some of the travails and tribulations that take place throughout our cities, our states, our country, and sometimes around the world. And what is going on in the state of Florida? There are so many stories about police officers shooting pedestrians or civilians. And unfortunately, you see a high propensity of it being a white cop or white cops, and then they end up shooting someone of color. And in this particular case, I want to bring to you, and I want you all to dissect it, because this black man called the police to have a tenant removed from his property. And as a result, when the police got there, they ended up arresting the homeowner in this incident. The homeowner, not the tenant that was acting erratically. They arrested the They were trying to arrest the homeowner, saying that he had an outstanding warrant for trespassing somewhere else. And this man ended up, not only did they try to arrest him, the police ended up trying to restrain him, tased him, and then two cops ended up shooting and killing him. So here again, the property owner called the police about his tenant, and all hell broke out, and the property owner ends up getting killed by the police. So listen to this story and you all tell me what you think. And Florida has had many incidences of police officers shooting civilians. And here again, white cops shooting people of color and killing them. But there's a caveat in this one. There's body cam footage. So let's see what you think. Body cam video released after Charlotte County, Florida deputies fatally shoot man outside his home. 2 days after an unarmed man was shot and killed outside his own home by two Charlotte County deputies, the sheriff's office released 20 minutes of body camera video of the incident. The linked video contains graphic language and imagery. According to the Charlotte County Sheriff Bill Prummel, Elroy Clark, now follow it, Elroy Clark is the property owner, 42 years old, was shot and killed while deputies were attempting to arrest Clark on a warrant for failing to appear in court on a misdemeanor trespassing charge. He ends up dying because of a misdemeanor warrant for trespassing. The incident happened Wednesday, October 23rd on Sandy Pine Drive near Punta Gorda. At 12:15 p.m., deputies responded to a disturbance between two men, Troy Johnson and Clark. Now, Troy Johnson is the tenant that's renting from Mr. Clark. Clark called to report that Johnson, his tenant, was acting erratically and wanted him off his property. During the course of the interaction, deputies identified Clark as having an active warrant for failing to appear in court on a trespassing charge from an incident June 4th. So when they get there, did they even address Mr. Johnson, the tenant, or did they immediately decide we're going to arrest the property owner for a misdemeanor trespassing charge? Deputies attempted to arrest Clark, so they reverted. Instead of getting rid of Mr. Johnson off the property or finding out about that, they went right to arresting Mr. Clark on a misdemeanor trespassing charge. They could have took care of both of these things. They could have removed Mr. Johnson from the property first, which is what the 911 call was all about. Remove him from the property and then address Clark about a warrant after that. But no, they went right after this misdemeanor trespassing warrant, and this man ends up dead. So deputies attempted to arrest Clark immediately. However, Clark said he didn't know who Elroy Clark was, so he lied to the police and claimed his name was Ben Day. Deputies asked Clark to put his hands behind his back, but he refused. Body cam video shows that Clark was repeatedly warned that he would be shocked with a stun gun if he didn't comply. After being stunned multiple times, Clark still refused and immediately was pepper sprayed. So he's been stun gunned, pepper sprayed, but he's still standing. He remained standing, repeating he was unaware of why he would be under arrest, video shows. After further investigation between deputies and Clark, one of the officers retrieved a less lethal beanbag shotgun from the patrol car. Clark was hit multiple times and still remained standing. So he has been pepper sprayed, he's been hit with a stun gun, and now with beanbags. And he still remains standing. This is a tough guy, Mr. Clark. At this point, the video shows Clark lunging towards a deputy who was holding a gun. In the text of the video released by the sheriff's office, it said after Clark was struck with the final beanbag round, he charged at and made contact with Deputy 3. Deputy 3 was holding his service weapon. Deputy 3 and Deputy 1, two deputies, Deputy 3 and Deputy 1, discharged their service weapons, striking Clark. CCSO said CPR was performed on Clark until medics arrived. Clark was pronounced deceased at the scene. In a news conference, Sheriff Prummel promised to provide this video as soon as possible so the community would be able to see what happened during the incident. According to Sheriff Prummel, the deputies are on administrative leave as per protocol. Johnson ended up being arrested for failing to register as a convicted felon. So after they killed Mr. Clark, who called the police on Mr. Johnson, after they stun gunned him, hit him with beanbags, and pepper sprayed him, and then killed him. They did 4 separate things to this man, and then ultimately 2 deputies shot and killed him. They decided to arrest Mr. Johnson, who the initial 911 call was all about. According to and listen to what Mr. Johnson's arrest report was about. He is facing charges of possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, manufacturing marijuana, possession of marijuana with intent to sell, and possession of drug paraphernalia. Sheriff Prummel says CCSO is working with the state attorney's office as the investigation continues. So, Mr. Clark owns the property. He wants Mr. Johnson off of it because he's acting erratically. Police come and they immediately decide to arrest the property owner, Mr. Clark, for a misdemeanor trespassing issue. While Mr. Johnson is a convicted felon, had an illegal firearm in his possession, had marijuana, and was trying to manufacture and distribute marijuana illegally, and had possession of drug paraphernalia. Who was the bigger issue or the bigger construct for negativity in society and needed to be arrested first? Mr. Clark or Mr. Johnson? Evidently, Mr. Clark, the property owner, did not have any felonies, doesn't say anything about a past felonious record. He had a warrant, allegedly, for a misdemeanor for trespassing, and he ends up dead. However, the convicted felon that was renting from Mr. Clark, Mr. Johnson, was caught with an illegal firearm, possession and distribution of marijuana, and they simply took him to jail. Mr. Clark ends up deceased. The person that made the call, Mr. Johnson, gets driven to jail. Was justice performed in this particular storyline? You tell me what you think. There's 20 minutes of body cam footage that is going to be very instrumental in finding out if these deputies crossed the line into criminality or did they do the right thing in the end. We never want our police officers and civilians, when they interact, for one of them to end up deceased. There is a number of qualifying factors in this particular case where lawyers on the defense side and on the state side are going to have to muddle through all of this mess. I don't see how the property owner, Mr. Clark, ends up deceased. He had been pepper sprayed. He had been stun gunned. He had been shot with bean bags. And then ultimately, two deputies shot him with their service weapon. So 4 or 5 things happened to him upon his death. While the convicted felon, who allegedly was acting erratic and living in Mr. Clark's house, uh, was not only a convicted felon, but had an illegal firearm, and as I said, possession and setting up distribution to sell marijuana, and he gets driven to jail and is still alive. This has a plethora of dynamics in this particular story. The state of Florida, I think it's a stand your ground. There are a lot of shootings with civilians against civilians, and unfortunately, from Miami all the way up through the state of Florida, there have been multiple instances where police officers have ended up shooting and killing civilians, and most of them of color, in a very astonishing and callous way. Tell me what you think. This has been the Trevor Donald Experience. Manifest your truth in a positive, righteous, and God-fearing way.